So a little while ago I did a video where I talked about 16 different watches that were all iconic, all under $500, and I listed all of those watches under 5 minutes. Today we're going to take a look at another list of 16 different watch brands. All 16 of these watch brands make very interesting watches. They're all somewhat affordable, all different levels of affordability, and all of them get the nod from watch collectors. So let's flip the camera and take a look at 16 different interesting watch brands. So getting right into it, IkePod. If you are not familiar with the brand IkePod, these are some pretty iconic watches from the 1990s and 2000s. They are disc shaped, so all of their watches, or almost all of their watches, have a circular sort of pebble shape. They were designed by Mark Newson, and they are very collectible. However, still on the secondary market, they don't go for a lot of money. They did revive the brand. I would definitely buy the vintage versions rather than the new models. That is just my opinion. Next on this list is a watch brand that a lot of people don't know exists. He's a designer and architect, Alan Silberstein. If you are familiar with his watches, that's because he does plenty of collaborations with a lot of different brands. However, he did have his own watch brand again in the 2000s and the 1990s. These were amazing watches, very colorful and very interesting watches, usually powered by a Valjoux movement, a lot of chronographs and some time-only models as well. Really interesting cases, pushers with lots of different colors and shapes. The hands were pretty crazy in all different shapes and sizes and colors, of course. And that is basically his design language, and these were very true to form. Next on the list is Gerald Genta. A lot of people don't know that Gerald Genta actually had his own watch brand, and it's not that popular. It was not that popular back then. However, they are starting to pick up steam now because he has become so popular. A lot of his watches feature retrograde movements and also characters like Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse. Really weird watches, very funky, and of course, very interesting. Next on the list is Oxen Jr. Oxen Jr. was started by Ludwig Oxlin. This is probably the most expensive watch brand on this list. Their watches start at around $5,000. They are known for their very simplistic, complicated movements. So essentially what they do is use a base movement and then add a very simplistic module on top that is built in-house, and you get a complicated watch with very, very few parts. Next on the list is a really interesting brand, a brand that just recently came out with their first micro rotor movement. This is Horage. Horage make a few different in-house movements. A lot of their watches aren't your ordinary designs. They make tourbillons that are affordable. And one of my favorite watches from the brand is the Super Seed. I actually have one in for review. I'll be doing a video on that watch in the very near future. Next on the list, and one of my favorite brands on this list, it's Lynn Verdelin. Lynn Verdelin have actually been around for quite some time. They make integrated bracelet watches with a very unique look. Their bracelets almost look like armadillo shells. They're kind of weird, and they're very futuristic and modern. They originally were designed to actually carry a ski or dive computer, and really right now all they are is just a really cool integrated bracelet watch that was inspired by the Royal Oak. However, obviously has its own sort of flair. Next is a watch that I've spoken about here on my channel. It's a very obscure dive watch company called Clerk. Clerk make really robust watches. They've been around for a while as well. I believe they are defunct. However, they have a very unique case shape. They actually have a key for their crown, which is kind of weird. Pretty awesome watches, and it's a shame that they're no longer around. Next on the list is a Chinese brand, actually pretty affordable. The name of the brand is Balade. They make some off-center dials, and they're all pretty affordable, and their quality is actually pretty high. Soon I'll be featuring one here on my channel. Next on the list is a watch that I also owned. It is the Amida Digitrend. These are actually going for more money than they ever have in the past. This is a driver's watch, so essentially when you're looking at the time, you could actually see the time on your wrist and you don't need to turn your wrist. It is one of the watches that actually inspired the MB&F HM5. Next on the list, and we're just coming to around number 10, is Azimuth. If you are not familiar with this brand, they are a brand based in Hong Kong. They use Swiss parts like Swiss movements. However, a lot of their cases and designs are really weird. They have watches that look like robots. They have watches that look like rockets, and they have watches that are inspired by cars and of course tanks. They use a lot of different movements like Sellita and Etta. However, what they do with those movements is somewhat extraordinary, especially considering the price. Talking about doing extraordinary things with base movements, Barons is another brand that is located in Hong Kong, and they incorporate tons of globes into their watches. They use base movements like the Sellita SW200, but the modules that they build and put on top of these watches make them pretty extraordinary. One of their watches, called the Mars Project, is an insane double globed watch. One is Mars, the other is the Earth, and basically it tells Earth time and Mars time. This is an insane watch in grade 5 titanium. Very, very cool. Next on the list is a watch that I actually own. It is a Vicentera. This is a grade 5 titanium watch, again, built on a base movement. This gets a ETA 2892. However, there's a module on top, and you have a grade 5 titanium globe in 7mm in that dial. It's so cool. And this is actually one of the more expensive watches on this list. However, it's still not astronomical at around $5,000. Number 13 on this list is another watch with another globe in it. This is Sega Design. I'm talking about the Blue Planet. This is a very popular watch that comes in at around $1,000. You can get it in stainless steel, ceramic, and of course titanium. They have a gold version and they have a blue version. This is a really cool watch for around $1,000. Another brand that it's sort of up and coming from China, very similar to Sega Design and some of the other watches that I have mentioned here, is Atwok. Atwok makes some pretty interesting watches with wandering hour complications and other simple ways of displaying the time very interestingly, and they use a lot of base movements from Miyota. So you're getting Japanese movements, pretty exciting, and I really cannot wait to see what they do next. We're getting towards the bottom of the list. We're at number 15, and I'm going to talk about Zelos. Zelos makes some really creative watches based on the fact that they are using a lot of different materials. They're constantly thinking about their watches, using new materials, updating their designs, and making something interesting for a collector. Lots of meteorite getting used. However, they're using things like crystalline titanium, all different materials, all different shapes. A lot of them are tool watches, but they're very, very interesting watches, and all of them are usually under $1,000. Last but not least, number 16 on this list are Gorilla watches. Gorilla watches, another one of those brands that have sort of a high and low aspect to their watch brand. They make a high-end watch that has a wandering hour. However, they also have lower-end watches that are powered by Miyota movements. These are really good-looking watches if you like a chunky watch. They were originally designed by someone who actually left AP. He left AP and he started his own brand, and that is Gorilla. So this was actually designed by someone who was a designer at AP. You know, why not? Kind of cool. And all of the watches are around that $1,000 mark. You can get them for well under $1,000 on the secondary market, and their wandering hours are around $2,000 to $3,000 depending on where you're buying them. Tell me what you guys think of this list down in the comments below. I know there are plenty of other brands I could have included on this list. Maybe I will make a second and third video just listing those brands because there are plenty of them out there. Tell me what you think. List some of those brands down below. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. It is super helpful for the channel and I very much appreciate it. And I will catch you in my next video.